sad statistic is that 1 in 4 women will be the victim of a financial crime at some point in her lifetime. I got kind of tired of having to unwind the mess. That was the passion behind building Svvy, was to vet out all the bad actors, look at how they make money, look at what products they're selling, look at if they're licensed, if they have complaints against them. And then once we get all the bad guys out, just connect women with people they know they can trust. And I think that's what makes me giddy and excited, because the financial planning practice is service-based. So it will always require me giving advice to my clients. But I've realized the capacity limits of service-based businesses. And then also, if you scale too big, too fast, you lose quality. And my business is all about boutique high quality, so I didn't want to scale that big and fast. But the technology company is exactly the opposite. I can really scale that, make an impact, and sell it, and still make the world a better place. Bringing our two different strengths together and building something has, as you asked me at the very beginning, is your heart full? Yeah, I get to build something with my baby sister. This is pretty cool.
Let's talk about media a little bit. Why do you think you've been on such a rampage, if you will, to start documenting so much of your journey when it comes to media? And why do you think it's so important for your story and what you're building with Svvy?
First thing people do is Google you before they take a meeting with you. And if you're not showing up in the right way, or you're not showing up at all, you're not getting the meeting. Actually, I had someone say that to me recently. And I went from that big bank profits first to change the incentive, change the outcome. And now we are a team that just puts the client's interest above our own. And it's pretty stinking cool. And it's not unusual to find a fiduciary advisor. There's about 14% of advisors are fiduciaries.
All right, guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Hart and Hustle podcast. I've got a special one for us here today because I've got Jenna Biancavilla with me today, and we're going to be talking about her journey in leaving the finance sector, starting a tech business with her family member as well, and then kind of creating a new path, if you will, in this industry, which I feel like is so valuable because the financial literacy space today, from an authentication perspective, is really up in the air. And so when we can lean into Jenna's story and talk about why she started her business, I really want to be able to share this with the audience. But before we do that, Jenna, I'd like to be able to ask a humanistic question to kind of get us started. How is your heart doing today?
Oh, that's a great question. My heart is full. I feel like I get to help other people, and that's what fills me up, is when I feel I can pour into someone else and I can help them out. And then usually they turn around and say something really nice back to me of, thank you, you've changed the trajectory of my life. And it makes my heart full.
I mean, that's amazing. Sometimes it's all about how we make people feel. You know what I mean? And especially when we talk about something as important as our finances, it's incredibly scary for so many people. And when you can invest into the people who you engage with, it creates an amazing relationship. One of the traditions that we have here on the podcast is we like for the previous guest to ask a question of our current guest. And so I have a guest who was on the podcast earlier this week. His name is Benjamin Monroe. And his question was, when did you realize that you were in control of your own ship? There's times when we realize I'm the finance person, I'm the LinkedIn guy, I'm the marketer. When did you realize that you were in control of your own ship?
You know what? I think it told me I was in control of it. I was in the finance world. I was working for other people, and it really was when I felt like other people weren't taking care of my clients in the way I said I was taking care of them. And I was stuck between big company profits and my clients. I told them I would serve them well. And I realized I wasn't in control when I worked for that big company. And so I had to pivot and take control of the ship. So it wasn't, I realized I was in control. It was, I realized I needed to take the reins.
I love that. So just to give everybody a little bit of kind of secret sauce about you, you're described as a holistic financial expert, an award-winning entrepreneur in the finance and tech space. You're a public speaker. You're the principal of Pearl Capital Management, and you're a co-founder of Svvy. So Svvy in itself has a unique mission. But before we kind of get into that mission, I want to ask you a question. What's wrong with the financial sector today? And why do you think Svvy has such a pivotal mission in trying to create safe spaces for people who are trying to get into this world of understanding their finances?
Well, the what's wrong with it? It's really just it's capitalism, unfortunately. Which I like that companies like to make money because I am an investor. I invest in the stock market, so I do want them to continue to put profits first, make money, so that when we're investing in them, we know what we're getting. But when it comes to investing your money with a big bank or a big financial institution, you're not first as the consumer. The profits are first. They have shareholders who come first. They have, the employees who usually they put their commissions first. And I think it's the part where most consumers aren't aware of that. They're not aware that their advisor isn't actually advising them with what is in their best interest. They're advising based on what is going to make their company and their shareholders profits, and it's that disclosure isn't there. It's not buyer beware. This works like a used car salesman. Watch out, you're being sold things you might not need to make profits for this company. And so that's the thing, that people end up in these products that paid high commissions that they didn't necessarily need, that put them in a bad financial situation. And 5, 10, 15 years later, they're just upset. They trusted a company, they trusted an advisor, and unfortunately they shouldn't have. They should, or I guess they should have been aware that they weren't putting their interest above their own.
One of my favorite sayings is change the incentive, change the results. And it seems like the financial institutions out there have really bad incentives for the overall, I would say, longevity and benefit of their actual customers. So what do you kind of think about that change the incentives, change the results kind of statement?
Well, it's where my heart is. That's why I opened my own financial planning shop. I changed the incentives. I removed all the commissions. I made it a exact transparent fee that is exactly aligned with the client. So our fee is correlated to how successful their account is. So if their account balance goes down, our fee goes down. And so we have all the incentive to help them have more money, and it's changed the whole culture of the way I work and the way my team works. And I went from that big bank profits first to change the incentive, change the outcome, and now we are a team that just puts the client's interest above our own. And it's pretty stinking cool. And it's not unusual to find a fiduciary advisor. There's about 14% of advisors are fiduciaries. So they're out there. They're not the majority, but they're out there. And that's why I created Svvy, so that I could just connect women with these advisors that are there. And I do the heavy lifting of vetting them and finding them for the women.
I know that you also have I would say, additional superpower who's a part of the Svvy co-founding team. Your sister, Janice, is heavy in the tech space. You come from the financial space. And so let's kind of talk about how that was the perfect marriage, if you will, to be able to create a product and an ecosystem where people could feel safe when it came to their finances.
Well, it's pretty stinking cool to work with your sibling, and you might know something about that.
I do.
And I just feel so blessed because I get to see my sister in a different light, and she is so smart, and I'm proud of her. She's my baby sister. She's not a baby at all, but she'll always be the baby sister to me. And bringing our two different strengths together and building something has, as you asked me at the very beginning, is your heart full? Yeah, I get to build something with my baby sister. This is pretty cool. And it's a passion project. We're trying to make the world a better place. We're trying to protect women. We're trying to allow them to vote with their dollars and show them we don't want those high commission sales guys anymore. So it's pretty special.
I mean, what a journey of being able to build something substantial with somebody who you love. You know, there's a lot of topics that are out there, and this maybe comes from the business world of never get into business with your family. Never do those things because the lines are going to get blurred. But from my perspective, and I know yours as well, if we're going to be spending so much time working, we might as well be spending time and making memories with the people who we love. And so I always kind of snicker, if you will, at people who say don't start business with your family, because what else is there to do in life other than build something substantial with somebody who you love and share in those memories, the ups, the downs, the starting, the tough times, and then eventually kind of the victories that we can share with each other. I want to kind of ask you a question, which is really important. When you approached your sister to kind of start Svvy, what was that conversation like? What was she working on? And how did you kind of convince her to be, your superpower and your sidekick in this?
Well, we still have our full-time real professions. And so Savvy is our extra thing that we're building on nights and weekends. So it was when I first approached her, it was just kind of this idea of what do you think and testing it out and should we build this and do you think it would work? And I have to say we didn't go into it realizing how big it would be. We kind of just said, "Yeah, let's test this out. Let's see. Let's sketch out the plan, and sketch out the algorithm and how would it work." And it snowballed. So I can't say that we sat down and drew the whole business plan and made a real decision to go into business together. It was more so those baby steps that we would look back and went, "Oh, how did we get here?" Uh, but what's really shocking is we had worked together in the past and it wasn't great. So early in my finance career, when she was fresh out of college, she was an assistant for me at my finance shop previously. And she didn't like working for me and the dynamic and how it was all going. And we said never again. And it was only after her and I had to work really closely together when my father needed a liver transplant and we were trying to get him on the transplant list. And we were spending all of our time in and out of hospitals and talking to doctors and really needing to organize and collaborate and share notes that we thought, we can actually do this and we can work together. So it was a really difficult situation we went through as a family that brought us together to realize, okay, we're more mature now. We can work together. And my father got his liver transplant and is well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
awesome. Well, congratulations on that.
Yeah.
Teamwork makes the dream work. And when it comes to saving the life of our family member, you guys accomplished something incredibly important. And so my hat goes off to you. And I want to give you guys a little bit of, personal gratitude for coming together because I know it's not easy. Me and my sister, as an example, she's a co-founder in Francis. And one of the things that we had when we were growing up is our relationship was not great until I went away for college. And it almost seemed like the distance made us closer. And so I want to kind of ask you a question. Between you and Janice, did you guys always have a really tight relationship? Or was it kind of like you're a big sister, you're a little sister?
We were different in school. I was the big sister. I was the cheerleader. I had that life and that trajectory. And she was, the younger rebel. She was a soccer player, more of a jock. So we were very different. We had different friends. We went to the same college. I joined a sorority and I recruited her and convinced her to join my sorority. And she followed and she got there and she's like, "This is not for me. I don't like all these girly girls." And so we were really different when we were younger. But now as adults, I don't know anyone who sees eye to eye with me more than my sister because we have all those shared life experiences. So we grew together. We've always been friends, but we were different. What about you and your
I heard
sister?
we're super tight now, but that's also come with some family, I would say, turbulence. Back in 2021, my father was diagnosed with prostate cancer, and I was living in Hawaii at the time. Alexa was here in Las Vegas, where I'm currently located. And I remember having phone calls with her and talking about how scary that experience was, because that was the first time where the livelihood, if you will, of a family member was actually challenged. And in that moment, it kind of put everything else into perspective. And now I'll be honest with you, like, do we see eye to eye on everything? I'm in charge of like sales and business development and stuff like that. And she handles all of our love and loyalty, which is like customer success. And so we've each found our own little lane that we can kind of operate in. But whenever there are challenging times, I heard a saying the other day and it was really powerful. It said, nobody is going to understand you like your sibling, because your parents are going to be around for a portion of your life and eventually they're going to pass away. But you and your sister, or you and your brother, your sibling, spend the entire lifetime together. They're going to be with you from the very beginning, all the times when you grow up, the times when you get married, the times when you have children, the times when you're middle aged and your bones start aching. And then eventually you are going to be the two who are left in your family. And it was just kind of an interesting perspective to me because I think especially in this world of business, we get caught up in the I want to accomplish more. But I've really been trying to do a good job of slowing down and enjoying this journey and this version of me and her together, because these are the times that we'll look back on when we're 60, when we're 70 years old and say, do you remember when we won that contract? Do you remember when we had that idea? And those are the times that we'll reminisce on instead of trying to rush to get to the next place. I'm not sure if you kind of try and deploy a mindset like that as well.
I've found that I love the journey, because when I achieve all the goals and I get to where I want to be, I think I get a little itchy and I wonder, okay, what's next? I can't just be satisfied in the achievement. It's the journey that actually makes me happy. I like the action and the momentum. And knowing that about myself and knowing that I like the journey makes me appreciate the day to day and the minutia a lot more, because I don't actually like standing at the top of the mountain. I like climbing the mountain.
I feel like that's an incredibly healthy perspective, because I feel like one of my favorite books is called The Gap and the Gain. It's by Dan Sullivan. And he talks about we often find ourselves or people with high achieving mindsets find themselves in the place of the gap because we're here and the goal that we're trying to get to is like the representation of the horizon. So there's always a distance between where we are now and where we're trying to get to. And if we're only chasing that horizon or that finish line, as soon as we cross it, it never really feels as sweet as we want. And so sometimes appreciating the journey to get there is the best way to create sustainability and enjoy the process. But the other side of the gap, and this is something I would love to kind of hear from your perspective, especially with your journey with your sister, is the gain. Do you guys ever take time to pause and say, look how far we've come from where we had this idea, we started creating the algorithm, things started snowballing? Do you guys ever kind of pause and say, look at what we've done together?
We're in both mindsets, and I've read this book, so I love The Gap and the Gain. And even though you might not have hit 100, you only hit 90 out of 100, appreciating the 90 that you did instead of the 100 goal, the 10% gap. We really try to live in both worlds. We definitely get frustrated because there are moments where we had a launch scheduled and we didn't make the deadline, and we had media that was going out, and this is embarrassing that people are clicking on a website that's locked down because it broke and we had to go back to development, but the media kept going with this. And so there's definitely times we're in gap mindset because it's frustrating when you don't hit your goals. But it's also really cool to see we took something from it didn't exist, it was just an idea, to we built it and it exists because we built it. And yeah, it launched a little later than we wanted, but it's here.
Do you ever think about kind of your goals on a longer time horizon? As I've gotten a little bit older, when I was in a younger mindset, I always thought of things as like, I need to accomplish it now. It needs to go perfect. But often as I get a little bit older, I recognize that the quickest way to build something to $1 million is not the quickest way to build something to $10 million, as an example. Mm-hmm. So do you ever try and, I would say, extend out your time horizon to give yourself more air cover, if you will, to accomplish your goals? So when the media is launching, but the website goes down, it's kind of like, okay, this is part of the plan, but we've got more time to accomplish our goal.
So I'm a planner, right? By profession. I've been a financial planner for 15 plus years now. So when it comes to money and having all of the finances in order, that's my wheelhouse. I love mapping out the money for the next 40, 50, 60 years. I've got that down pat. When it comes to running my business, I've tried to do 10-year goals, and life is a series of obstacles. And every single time I get to 5 or 10 years and I look back at those goals I wrote, it's a joke. It's like life is just like, yeah, right. You thought that's where you're going. You went here. And you know what? Where I went was better. And I think that's a big part of entrepreneurship, is seeing the opportunities that come your way, pivoting and taking them when there's a global recession or whatever is going on. Or a global pandemic, or all of the things that we've lived through. But I think it's pivoting is a big answer to seeing where you're going and part of your 10-year, 20-year journey.
I know that you're a big reader because I listened to a previous episode that you recorded and you talked about Atomic Habits as being one of the best books for mindset. But I don't want to go there yet. I want to ask you a question. Do you ever do any research on a growth mindset? Carol Dweck from Stanford University talks about a growth mindset. Have you looked into that at all?
I've looked into growth mindset a little bit, haven't read on this. What do you want to share about growth mindset?
Okay, so this is really interesting to me because my girlfriend is in medical school right now, and she's going to become a physician's assistant. And she has been amazing through her entire academic career, and she's very much a type A personality. And so are her classmates. And one of the things that I recognize about them and just kind of how they come across obstacles is when we have a plan and it doesn't go well, sometimes it's easy for us to get flustered because we have an expectation of how things are going to go. But like you said, life in itself is full of twists and turns. And
Mm-hmm.
so a growth mindset in itself is really about kind of the ability to recognize that our only objective is to continue to keep learning. When we come across hardship or situations that challenge us, instead of saying, this isn't part of the plan, we should be saying, okay, what can I learn from this situation and how can I adapt and kind of move to this? And in itself, I think you've got a little bit of an interesting dichotomy because you're a planner and your success is based on planning coming in the financial space, but you're also an entrepreneur and you see how twisty and turny the road of entrepreneurship is. You really have to put yourself in both camps. And it's just really interesting kind of to dive into the mindset of somebody like you because you get paid to plan, but you're also on a journey that is completely uncharted.
Well, Ryan Holiday. Do you read Ryan
Oh
Holiday at
yeah.
all,
Yeah.
and all of his Stoic stuff and that ancient wisdom of, you're going to sail your ship and you're going to try to get from point A to point B, and that's the plan. The plan is to go to point B, but you also have a plan for if you get boarded by pirates or you run aground or there's a big storm or whatever was a thing back in the day of the Stoics. And that is how my mind works. Is I have a goal and I know where I'd like to go, and then I think of every single case scenario and what might happen if all those different possible things happen. I call it my spider web because you can go in all of these different directions. And it's nice to have a plan for all of the different directions and say, okay, I know what the worst case scenario is, I know what the best case scenario is, and I'm pretty comfortable in this spectrum of places that I could potentially go. um, but also I've thought about all of these. And so I'm also more accepting to pivoting because I've gone through all of these different scenarios before I sailed my ship towards a destination that I probably don't end up at because, I've read, whoa, what's this startup book? I just lost it. The Lean Startup, which is basically all about pivoting,
Oh yeah.
and making sure that you know that your business is not going to go in the direction you want to. And reading the Lean Startup will definitely teach you to pivot.
It really will. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just an interesting perspective. One of the topics that I really want to get into is kind of the idea of skill stacking. And especially because we're recording this podcast together, I want to talk about the idea that media has created in our minds and why it's so fundamental for us to record podcasts like this because there's tons of types of leverage in the world today. There's human capital leverage. You can get other people to work for you. Thumbs up. Sorry about that. You also have, media leverage, which means we can record a podcast like this and other people can connect with us and we will be always out in the world, omnipresent. And there's also a leverage through code, as an example, being able to write a piece of software like you are doing with Svvy that gives you the scalability to do things. But let's talk about media a little bit. Why do you think you've been on such a rampage, if you will, to start documenting so much of your journey when it comes to media? And why do you think it's so important for your story and what you're building with Svvy?
Well, when people come and they meet with me, or they call me, or they sit down for a meeting, they usually have already researched me, watched a handful of podcasts, read some of the content that I've put out, and they show up to a meeting with someone I've never met before telling me, I already know everything about you. I saw your Instagram. I know that you foster dogs and you volunteer with, kids in the foster care system, and I like what you're all about, and I'd like a meeting with you. So they already really do their research. The first thing people do is Google you before they take a meeting with you. And if you're not showing up in the right way, or you're not showing up at all, you're not getting the meeting. And actually, I had someone say that to me recently. They said, I got referred to two different advisors. I looked you up and the other advisor up, and he didn't have any information online. Not it was bad, just there wasn't anything there. And this client said, I thought, boy, he could just pack up and leave, and I would never, and no one would ever care because he's not present, or he doesn't have a lot of content out there. And so they saw it as flighty or not really invested into their profession because they weren't putting content out.
Man, that's a really interesting perspective. And because it kind of goes back to something we were talking about before we started recording here, which is like human behavior. If you think about consumer behavior today, normally we're not going to just randomly click on somebody's link and book a time with them, but we want to do research. And I love to kind of dive in a little bit more because something really sparked in my mind when you were talking about you being a dog mom. Why are you such a dog mom and why do you like fostering animals? A little bit of background is my entire life, my mom has fostered animals. We've probably had hundreds of dogs and hundreds of cats. And I know that people who foster animals have a really warm heart. So what's kind of your story with fostering?
Oh, I to my core I embody that quote by Gandhi, and I'm not trying to sound like I'm a great person. And just that quote Gandhi says of be the change you wish to see in the world. And there's something inside of me where I see a problem and I think, I wish more people foster dogs. All these dogs in the shelters, there's kill shelters. I wish more people did it. And then I have to take a second and say, if not me, then who? Who's going to do this? Because I'm busy, but so is everyone else. And I can figure out time. I'm self-employed. I can bring them to my office. And guess what? I have employees. My employees now have part of their job description. You might have to help me with the dog I bring home. And everyone knows when they sign on with a job with me, you might have to help me with one of these dogs because I'm busy. But I also get these emails now that I'm a foster for the Humane Society. And the emails will say, these dogs are really sick. We're going to have to put them down because we can't afford this sickness spreading throughout the shelter. Not because they're a kill shelter, but just the situation. And then I cry and I go get them. And then here we are again.
Oh man, that's just so beautiful because we all have our own stories. And I can't tell you how many times my mom, I even have, so in the office right now, you can't see him. He's sitting on this chair over here. My name is Keenan. My dog's name is Kel. So if you grow up anytime in the 90s, early 2000s, you understand the Keenan and Kel reference. Because when I was growing up, my friends always made fun of me. They were like, hey, where's your best friend Kel? And when I got older, I was like, you know what? I'm going to turn this into a joke. But one day my mom called me and said, hey, this beagle got thrown away in the trash can because it was constipated. They were going to try and just throw him away, but would you mind fostering him? And naturally in my mind, I was like, this is the best sales pitch ever. Because as soon as she knows that I have this dog in my house and he's a puppy and all my friends start to like him, I'll never let him go. And now we are here almost 9 years later and he sits in all these meetings with me. So that fostering mentality is just like so near and dear to my heart. And I think we gave everybody a little bit of a personal side of Jenna today, because when you talk about those things, it allows for other people to connect with us, which is absolutely amazing. What? Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to give a little pitch for fostering for anyone who's on the edge, on the cliff, thinking about maybe being a foster. The fosters actually get the first pick of all the shelter dogs. And so usually all the good ones the fosters keep, they never make it to the adoption floor. So if you want the first pick, you get a trial run. So worst case scenario, you trial run with a shelter dog. You didn't like them. You send them back and you did a good deed and everyone's happy. Best case scenario, your trial run works out great and you keep them. So there's my sales pitch on why you should foster a dog.
There you go. That is going to be the timeless sales pitch for fostering forever. Just spend time with them. Just let them sleep in your bed, cuddle a little bit, give them a good place, and then we'll see what happens. Those guys are marketers and salespeople first, I swear to God, which is really cool. One of the things that you talked about a couple seconds ago, I want to back up to was, part of your job description with your team is you're going to have to help Jenna raise these animals and take care of them sometimes. One of the things that I heard in a previous episode was you talked about when you first started building your team, you went through kind of a revolutionary process and understanding that not everybody's going to be exactly like you. So let's kind of talk about those early stages of building out your team and then recognizing that not everybody's going to grind as hard as Jenna does. And that's okay.
Well, that was a lesson I learned when I was managing at a different company. Thank goodness I didn't have to learn that lesson when I was paying the employees. But I just thought, I work this hard, I grind this hard, everyone's like me, why aren't you like me? And I was a terrible manager when I first started. I had no training. And I apologize to all those people. But I learned that everyone brought unique skills and unique qualities. And it was actually, that's what makes the world go round. That's what makes a business operate well, because I am a quick start. If you know the Colby personality test, I am an ideas person. I have way too many ideas. I invent a new business idea every single week. If someone needs a business idea, call me. I have to throw them away every week. And most of my team members are much more in the methodical, organized type of personality. And so when I come up with a new idea, they all now say to me, okay, Jenna, where does that go on the priority list? Because we know it's not important. Should we just put it away in the parking lot? Is it like just don't even add it to the list at all? And so they know how to manage me and my entrepreneur brain. And that makes us so much more successful than if I just had a round table of a whole bunch of ideas people. We'd get nothing done at all because we would just continue to throw ideas at each other. So I'm really lucky that I don't have a whole bunch of people like me, and that I've learned that that's not what I need on my team.
Yeah, I feel like that's a beautiful mindset. And that's part of our maturation process as leaders as well. You know, one of the things that I always looked at when I was growing up was I saw tyrannical leaders like Steve Jobs as an example, who led with an iron fist, who were sharp with their tongue, burnt their teams over, were willing to turn people over if they didn't get the job done. But now I see a huge shift in the form of leadership, of being able to connect with people, being a people person. In our last call, I believe we talked about soft skills and how you can leverage empathy, compassion, kind candor, curiosity as a leader. And in doing those things, we get more out of our team members as well. And so, my question for you is, how do you prioritize the soft skills in your leadership style with kind of nurturing your team and getting the most out of them as individuals?
Well, one of the things that I really wanted to do was lean into what was important to them. And all of my team members are at different stages of life. We have a pretty diverse team, and a lot of people have life outside of work. And so we made Fridays optional. So we have a flex Friday, and we don't take client meetings on Friday. I'll check in and work and catch up. And some people want the extra hours. They want to work a little bit more, so they'll pick up a Friday shift here or there. But we're lucky to be in a type of business that we can get about half manpower on Fridays and still get everything done, because we're not taking those client meetings on that day. But just little things like that, giving them the ability to rejuvenate, to spend time on what is important to them. I also talk about money. We're in a money business, so I should talk about money. And I really say you're here to trade your time for money. So this needs to be a good use of your time. You need to feel fulfilled doing it, but also remember, we're making money, and so the money part needs to make sense for you financially. Is there a better job that you can get somewhere else? Do I need to pay you more to convince you to stay? So we talk about money a lot because I, I'm smart enough to know that if I stopped paying them, they wouldn't show up anymore. So, all of the pieces of why people have a job and why what people do outside of their job, I make sure that we're addressing all of that. We do some charity donation matching, and we talk about a lot of the other things other than work.
I think that's super important for the new generation of people who are coming into work. And when I say that, I don't mean just Gen Z. I'm talking about everybody on the other side of the pandemic, because it seemed like previously we were living to work and now we're working to live. We're using work as a vehicle that helps us experience life. And that's something that's super important. I have an interesting little question for you. Because you've been in the finance space for so long, I want to know, did you guys have these type of financial conversations? Did you talk about money a lot when you were growing up? Was it a taboo topic? Was it something that you guys openly communicated about? What was that like?
Oh no, I grew up in a household that looks a lot like kind of middle America, where there wasn't enough money for the spending. My dad was a veteran, so we got a VA loan to buy the house, and lucky we were in a place in Arizona where the home equity kept increasing. But then we bought a boat and a truck to pull the boat, and then we had to refinance and get the equity out of the house to cover the boat because the payments were too high, and we were just living paycheck to paycheck, barely getting by. There were fights when people overspent. And I think that's actually one of the reasons my sister and I both work so hard, is because we never want to be in that financial place where we are strapped. So her and I are both really driven. We have great work ethic. I don't know. I guess it was the positive thing that came out of our money trauma that we work hard. But probably there's a therapist somewhere that can unpack some more of that and tell me that maybe I work too hard because of my money trauma.
I mean, here's a question for you. So, working too hard, especially in the world of social media today, a lot of people say we should only work 4 days a week. You shouldn't have to work more than 40 hours. You shouldn't do all this type of stuff. Working is evil, if you will. But when you're the principal of a management company, but you're also the founder of a company like Svvy, you have to put in a lot more work than I think people, I would say, anticipate or think you do. So, what is kind of your relationship with, I would guess, the idea of like work life balance? Or is it something more of like work life integration? And there's not really a right answer, but it's what's appropriate for you.
It is work life integration. When you choose to be a multipreneur, you are basically saying, I don't like my free time very much. I like building as my passion project, as my hobby. And that is true for me. I don't watch television. I really try to avoid being on social media much because I need those hours because I am working on a couple other businesses and I can't do it during normal business hours because I have the financial planning practice that takes up all of the normal business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. And so I have to squeeze these extra business ideas that I come up with into my free time. And I choose that. I actively choose that. I like building. I feel like that's where I'm at in my life. I'm in building years. And the goal, I'm going to cross my fingers. The goal is that hopefully I'll pull out of these building years and be able to lean on some of these things that I've already built during my building years. And so I'm hoping it's going to turn out to be an ebb and flow. And right now I'm ebbing a little bit and working a little bit harder and planning on flowing a little bit, maybe 10 years from now.
I mean, me and you are in the same space. I love showing up to work because I realize the work that I do today is exponentially more valuable in the future. And if I
Mhm.
can build, when I kind of look at business, I always talk to my sister about we're building a money printing machine here. And the more time you spend tuning and twisting all the little screws and bolts to get this thing really humming, the more it's going to produce for us over our lifetime. And some people often say, I have family members who aren't into my immediate family, and they say, Keenan, you work too much. You're going to get burnt out. How do you kind of deal with maybe those friends or those family members who don't have the same understanding of the role that entrepreneurship and business kind of plays in our lives?
Oh, my closest friend when I started the business just said, "When are you going to give up on that and get a real job?" She's not my closest friend anymore because I needed people who were going to support the journey I was on. You can't just fire everyone in your lives, but my both of my parents are, of the W-2 job mindset. My mom still tries to just pop into my schedule for lunch in the middle of the day at the last minute. I'm like, I have meetings. I do have a real job. She's like, but you work for yourself. I'm like, no, you can't just pop into my schedule. I'm booking out. So um, my parents don't fully understand it. I can't kick them out of my life. I like them. I'm stuck with them. But it's more than just being a workaholic. I think when you brought up scale, and I think there's something really different about the different businesses that I've built. And I think that's what makes me giddy and excited because the financial planning practice, it's service based. So it will always require me giving advice to my clients. And so you hit capacity. And I realized that I've been doing it long enough that I kind of feel like I'm hitting capacity and I'm going to be a lot more, well, I already am a lot more selective about which clients I take on. And then also, making sure that if I can't serve a client best, I maybe bring in a different advisor who can. But I've realized the capacity limits of service-based businesses. And then also if you scale too big, too fast, you lose quality. And my business is all about boutique high quality. So I didn't want to scale that big and fast. But the technology company is exactly the opposite. And it is build it, set it, get it all in place, and then we can scale this. All we have to do is really get some marketing in place. We could scale it. I could sell it. I don't want to sell my financial planning practice. My clients are like my babies. I love them. So I couldn't imagine selling my babies. I'm just really protective of them. But the technology company, I can really scale that, make an impact and sell it and still make the world a better place by selling it. So I think that's what gets me excited is because I'm building something totally different.
Yeah, I mean, it's a crazy world to think about the leverage that we can create with technology today. When we first started our business in 2014, we were a telehealth company. So we were really focused on developing hardware solutions, basically a kiosk with a screen that we would go place in a hospital. People would come to us. They'd have services rendered over the virtual doctor. And that was my first experience with how kind of software is that, I would say, jump across the chasm that helps us be anywhere instantaneously. And just so happened right before the pandemic, I was really harping with my team as, guys, if we get into a situation where people can't come to us, we don't have any more value for our customers. So we started developing a SaaS platform that uses two-way SMS communication and allows for us to scale wherever there's a cellular signal, meaning we can engage with people, we can communicate, we can have those conversations, we can follow up, we can deliver education. And that really kind of got me on this little, I would say, hiatus and this high from being able to develop software because it's nationally scalable. And it's also has such a lower overhead as well, because when we develop software, it just allows for us to be anywhere, anytime. We can provide value, just like what we're doing right now. This episode's going to live forever on the internet, and so will that code that we develop as well. So I really resonate with kind of that ability to get into the tech space. But it's definitely it's a different world out here too. Highly competitive, well funded, very I would say cutthroat, if you will. What's kind of your perspective in making the transfer from service over into the SaaS space?
Oh my gosh, it sounded so easy.
It did. It really did.
I had an idea, put out the business plan, like, okay, now I just need to hire some developers to write the code. What could go wrong? And holy cannolis, it is so much more than I thought. I just thought build the technology and then it lives in perpetual life, as you shared. I made the mistake of hiring an India-based development team because the price was
Too
well.
good to pass up.
Here, I'll give the numbers because I'm a numbers person. To build the technology in the United States was going to cost $150,000, like just to see if this idea worked. And in India, it was like $10,000. And it was the numbers were like, oh yeah, I won't even build it if I have to spend 150,000. I'm not even going to consider building it. So I wouldn't even I would have been priced out of trying the idea. But India, I'm like, okay, I can get behind this price point. But you get what you pay for. And every time we fixed one thing, five other things broke. And it just was a mess. And at some point, we had to say, okay, the idea works. We got the MVP together. And then we ended up having to scrap the whole thing that we spent about a year building and have to build version 2 with a US based team so it actually worked. So I wasted the money in the long run. But that's the thing in tech is you need that MVP. And it was a lot harder and a lot longer than I originally had expected it to be.
I mean, we always say it as well, twice as long, twice as expensive. When we started developing our software platform as well, we used a team in Australia and we thought this was going to be great. We stood up the MVP with our first couple customers. There were tons of problems. And then I had to find a US based team and I had them look at the code and they were like, dude, this stuff is spaghetti. Like, no wonder stuff keeps breaking. It's terrible. And so a couple $100,000 later, I mean, we have a platform that is solid, is stable. We can build on top of it. But once again, kind of going back to my point a little bit earlier, what a story to be able to laugh about later in life, because we did it, we tried it out, and we can share that with the people who we built it with, which I think is so beautiful. I want to use the last couple minutes here to kind of focus us back in on the mission of Svvy and the impact that you guys are trying to have. One of the things that you told me early in our previous discussion was there was a specific number of women who are taken advantage of from a financial perspective. And I really think it's important for us to kind of hammer home what that is so people can really understand the motivation behind what you guys are building.
Well, the sad statistic is that 1 in 4 women will be the victim of a financial crime at some point in her lifetime. And that I had seen through my financial planning practice. I had seen all of these women who were put in bad investment products, not illegal, just not suitable. So maybe all of her money was locked up into an annuity that she didn't have access to, and she wanted to buy a home and she couldn't get access to her money because annuities pay really high commissions. And so the sales guy wants to put as much money in there as possible. And so sometimes a not suitable investment, while not illegal, could still be considered in this 1 in 4 women that are considered a victim of either unsuitable investments or financial crimes. And I got kind of tired of having to unwind the mess because I became the safe place where all these women were getting referred to and saying, I just want to be able to buy a house. Why can't I access my money? Why is my advisor saying I can't have my money? And I had to be the bearer of bad news. Oh, because he put you in a high commission product that's not liquid. And I realized I couldn't scale, like going back to scale, I couldn't scale the financial planning practice big enough, fast enough to really solve this nationwide problem we had. So that was the passion behind building Svvy, was to vet out all the bad actors, look at how they make money, look at what products they're selling, look at if they're licensed, if they have complaints against them. And then once we get all the bad guys out, just connect women with people they know they can trust. So women are connected with advisors or experts that they know have already been vetted out, so they can put their guard down and take action and make decisions. Because a lot of women, they've heard these stories, they have a friend or a family member who'd been taken advantage of, because it is common, and they say, I don't want that to happen to me, so I will do nothing. I'll leave all my money in a checking account. So the purpose of Svvy is to really help those women take action and move forward.
I mean, I feel like what an amazingly beautiful mission, because once again, you've mentioned this a couple times, creating a safe space for conversations about our finances is so important, but also having people who we know have been vetted, people that we can trust, who we can come to in some of our most vulnerable moments. Because I know when we talk about financial issues, that often comes on the other side of traumatic experiences like divorce, or maybe my husband was like died or they passed away, or maybe I went through a terrible financial situation. I have a lot of trauma that's built up from that. And so I just love the fact that you guys are really being intentional about what you guys are building to create that safe space for others, because there's people who are definitely watching and listening to this episode who have said, I know somebody, or I am somebody who's been a part of that distrust or that process where I was taken advantage of. And it's just so cool to know that there are entrepreneurs out there who are really putting a dent in what the future of financial literacy looks like, to be able to create a safe place for us, especially our women in our society, because we need more help than ever. And it's just so cool. And I just really appreciate all the work that you're doing.
Well, thank you. We're excited, and men can use the platform as well if they wanted to. So we're welcome to everyone, but we really wanted to make sure that women felt that we were speaking exactly to them with our marketing. And we also, I guess I should mention, you said financial literacy. We are just launching a new advanced level financial literacy masterclass called Elevate Your Wealth. So for those people who are still in the I'm not ready to talk to a human yet part of their financial journey, they can just sign up for the masterclass and get the videos and get some next level financial literacy. I saw a hole in the content that was online. There's a lot of beginner level stuff, but once you know the basics, people didn't know where to go for the next layer of information without speaking directly to a professional. So we made that course.
You're not only the idea person, but you're also the connector person as well. I grew up with a really cool toy called the Connect It set. And the most valuable pieces in that entire thing were the little circles that brought all the other pieces together. And I'm just so cool that you're filling some of those holes that we see in our financial world. So thank you so much for being on the podcast. I want to use the last couple seconds here to have you pose a question for our next guest. So what do you got for us, Jenna?
Ooh, a question for the next guest. Let's maybe ask them, what was the biggest challenge or the darkest moment of their career?
Oh, that's a good one. I can't wait to be able to hear that. Well, once again, for everybody watching and listening today, Jenna, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been awesome to kind of hear about your heart and your hustle. And I know that you're aligned with a bigger mission to be able to serve your community. And the impact that you're making is only going to be measured in the decades when we can look back and appreciate the gain of how far we've come today. So I appreciate all the time that we spent together. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Keenan.